My name is Lisa Bennett, and I can't say I'm having fun. I'm competing for one of the manager positions in our office, and the competition is fierce. I did my best to stand out from the other employees who have been here as long as I have. But I'm not sure I did enough to give myself an advantage. In fact, I did more than I should have, but getting this position is very important to me. Becoming a manager is the first step to becoming a leader in our company. Becoming part of senior management is one of my goals. I'm ashamed to admit, but for the last 2 months I've been sleeping with my boss to make sure he has his support. I feel terrible about this, but I need to take every advantage I can find. I compete with other employees who don't have my weaknesses. Some of the women I compete with are much prettier than me, and some have a more attractive figure. I don't have big breasts or slim round buttocks. My legs are not perfect like bikini models, and I'm not even the smartest among the candidates. I have the advantage of knowing the company's policies and procedures, but heck, anyone can look up our regulations. I am not alone, so I don't have the flexibility to travel anywhere at the last minute or work overtime without restrictions. I need to do everything in my power to get this position. This will improve my family's life. I love my family more than anything in the world, and I want them to be proud of me. My husband Jeff is my soulmate. I love him more than life itself, and he treats me the same way. When I need something done for work, Jeff takes over my responsibilities. When I needed to attend a management seminar, Jeff juggled not only his responsibilities, but mine as well. He never complained, he just did what needed to be done. I hope he finds the strength to do this for me again. Part of the reason I feel so bad about what I do is because I love Jeff so much, but the desire to be a leader crowds out everything else from my thoughts. This is my most cherished dream. I want to be one of those women in business suits and dresses with a narrow briefcase. I want to be that woman everyone is afraid of. I want to stand level with important men and determine company policy. Since childhood, I have always been fascinated by the images of female leaders and entrepreneurs. As I approach 40, my chances of inventing something new or starting a business are becoming increasingly slimmer. My best chance is to move up the career ladder at an existing company. This is probably my last chance to make sure my dream doesn't die, so I'm doing whatever it takes to succeed. Come hell or high water, I have to give it my best shot. My children don't understand this yet. They know that sometimes mommy has to work longer and daddy picks them up and takes them away. Sometimes dad has to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for them. Sometimes dad has to put them to bed. Sometimes dad has to tell them that mom loves them because they haven't seen me for several days. I leave before they wake up and come back when they are already asleep. I hate it all. Sometimes it makes me feel like a failure as a mother when I miss their performances and sporting events, but I tell myself that it will be worth it in the end. It seems the reason for my current dissatisfaction is that I thought the worst was over. I thought that once my boss, Ken Daniels, recommended me for the position, I wouldn't have to sleep with him anymore. But I just found out that he wants me to spend the whole weekend at a seminar on the island. He said all the biggest executives in our company would be there, and it would give them a chance to see me in action. When he dangled this carrot in front of me, I realized that I couldn't refuse. But I also knew that he would expect sex. And it's not his fault either. Ken is married just like me. He has 2 children, a girl and a boy, just like me. I know his wife Patty and I like her. Ken didn't rape me either. He didn't harass me. I took the first step myself. Ken was talking about how many employees were vying for the manager position that would become available when George Willis retired at the end of the financial year, and how difficult it would be to make that decision. I thought about it for a couple of days, and when he came to work in a bad mood. This morning, I asked him if everything was okay. He said Patty had what he called girl problems, so she wasn't relieving his stress. He laughed about it, but later that day, I pleasured him in his office. I also told him that he should take me with him on his trip to Ohio. When we were in Ohio, I let him have sex with me, and that started our relationship. There was no love in this. Ken loves his wife, and I love my husband. For him, it was just sex and my way of gaining an advantage over my competitors. When he gave me the recommendation, I really thought the sex between us was over. There was really no need to continue. Patty recovered from her problems, and my name was on the list. As far as I was concerned, we were done. Besides, Patty is prettier than me, younger than me, and Ken loves her. Why the hell would he need me? Now I have to go home and ask my husband, who I am deceiving, and who is already doing more than his share of work at home and with our children, to let me go away for the weekend to a seminar. If anyone deserves a day off, it's him. It was the first time I left the office at a reasonable time. It was only 7 o'clock when I pulled into our driveway to pick up Jim's Jeep. I almost found myself under a stream of water. Jeff washes and smokes this car again. I think he washes it every day in the summer. It's probably closer to every second or third day, but damn. The last time I washed my car. I don't even remember the last time I washed my car. He smiled and waved as I got out of the car. He put the hose down and came up to me to kiss me. He took my briefcase with one hand and hugged me with the other. I tried not to notice how his other hand slid onto my buttocks, which he gently squeezed. As we walked through our backyard on our way into the house, the kids kept running around the yard, chasing each other. Several children from the neighbors played with them. I turned around and smiled at them, but they continued to play. "They're having fun," Jeff said. "They didn't even notice I came home," I said. I was really sad that my kids didn't even come over to say hello to me. Jeff noticed my disappointment and smiled. Then he pressed me to the table and hugged me. When he leaned in to kiss me, I felt him getting excited. He kissed me gently but insistently, and with both hands he squeezed my saggy buttocks. "Long time no see, Liz," he said between kisses. "Jeff, it was just this morning," I mumbled between kisses. "And before that it was last night and yesterday afternoon, while the children were sleeping." "I can't live without you," he said. I laughed because it was true. We have been married for over 14 years, and my husband's passion for me has never waned. As I aged and cut my long hair to a more manageable short cut, it didn't change anything. As my ass began to expand and my ex-cheerleader body became almost housewife-like, Jeff said it made me even cozier. While all the women my age were complaining that their husbands rarely wanted sex, Jeff continued to make love to me at every opportunity. And he was cunning sometimes too. I remember a couple of weeks ago when there was still snow outside and we had a family movie night. The children were still alert and did not intend to fall asleep soon. I relaxed in my underwear and long robe. Jeff called me down to the basement. His voice was loud and he seemed upset. When I came down the stairs, he was muttering something about what I had done to the washing machine. He closed the basement door behind us and followed me down the steps. "See," he said, "you need to fix this." "What?" I asked, looking at the car. I took a closer look and found Jeff standing behind me. He quickly lifted my robe and began to caress me. I was shocked, but it turned me on. We had very passionate sex. He ran back upstairs to continue watching a movie with the kids while I got ready. Jeff knew me so well. He knew exactly what my needs were. He also knew how to manipulate them. He knew enough to treat me like a bitch to get me horny and then slow things down and make sure I knew he loved me by finishing me off with romantic and tender sex. I have never told my husband no, and I never will. He knows this, but does not abuse this privilege. We had sex in public places, which fuels my desire for risky things. But he never does it in places where we might be caught by someone who knows us. Lots of strangers have seen us having sex like hell, but no one we know has ever come close. Reality intrudes, and suddenly I'm back in the present, and my body is reacting to Jeff as it always does. I want him very much, but I always want him. The problem is that I'm not clean right now. I turn away from him. "Honey, the kids might see us," I said. "I'll take a shower and meet you in our room. You can bring me a plate of any delicious dinner you fed our children." "What then?" he is asking. "And then I'll give you the latest bad news," I pouted. "What then?" he asks again. "And then, when the children fall asleep." I turn to face him and look into his eyes. I'm amazed at the amount of emotion I read from him. He clearly loves me, but sometimes even I am surprised by how much. After the kids are asleep, "You can do whatever you want with me for as long as you want," I said. "Now you're talking," he says happily. When I get out of the shower, I tell Jeff about the trip, and he just smiles and tells me that he can play with the kids for the weekend, and that it's no big deal. When the children fall asleep, my husband turns over on his back and undresses me. He starts with a gentle massage, and then he makes slow romantic love to me, and we fall asleep in each other's arms. The next morning I wake up and start getting ready for work. I kissed his forehead and made a firm decision that the weekend trip would be the last time I cheated on him. He deserves much better than what he gets from me. 2 days later, Jeff and the kids will take me to the airport. We drive my Volvo rather than his Mustang because he doesn't like putting luggage and other things in its tiny trunk. He also doesn't like kids kicking the backs of his leather seats. The back of my Volvo also looks like a candy store trash can, with all sorts of chewing gum and pieces of candy stuck to the seats. If his back seat looked like this, Jeff would have had a heart attack or at least a vasectomy. I met Jim and several of our colleagues on the plane. We flew to the coast and then took a boat to the island. As we get off the big boat, I notice that the island is called La Isla Tentacion. It's more like Fantasy Island from that old TV show. As soon as we step off the ramp, people rush to grab our bags. As soon as we check into the hotel, we are immediately sent to a bungalow in a more secluded part of the island. The first thing I notice is that Ken and I live in a bungalow that is close to our other colleagues. I immediately tell him that the housing will not work. "Ken, there is no way I will share a room with you," I told him. "All I need is for one of the guys to notice the arrangement and spill the beans. What do you think Jeff would do to you if he found out about this? What would Patsy do to you?" He looked disappointed, but he called the desk and gave me a private room. We were all tired from the flight and boat ride, so after dinner, we all went to our rooms to rest. Less than 10 minutes after I got to my room, there was a knock on my door. Ken slipped inside as soon as I opened the door. "God, I've been waiting for this for 2 days," he exclaimed. "Why are you still wearing clothes?" He started trying to unbutton my blouse, but I just let him do it. I was in shock. "This will have to be done quickly," he said. "I really need to save my energy for tomorrow." He took off my blouse and pulled down my shorts and had sex with me. "Thank you, Lisa," he said when he finished. He then headed to his room or to the bar. I have no idea where he went. I was simply shocked. I stayed in the dirty bed and cried quietly. Of course, I understood that it was my own fault. After all, what did I expect? Every encounter Jim and I had was the same. Hasty sex in cheap motel rooms was all we spent together. In fact, what we had cannot be called a romance, because a romance is a relationship. While most involve a lot of sex, they also include dates, dinners, and trips. All Ken and I ever did was just relieve his stress. I guess in the back of my mind, I thought that since this would essentially be the last time we'd do anything, he'd make it memorable, or at least like we meant something to each other. I realized once again how superior my husband truly was to Ken, and once again I vowed to never do anything like that again. I called Jeff at home and told him how bad I was and that I missed him. He said the same thing he always said. "Honey, you can come home whenever you want. You might even quit this job. We'll be fine," he said, and I knew he meant it. Hearing his voice made me feel stronger. Tomorrow, I was determined to demonstrate to the other 3 managers how competent I was and to gain their support as well as Jim's. The next day, Saturday, will be the main working day. We'd have a social event on Saturday night and then head back to the boat first thing Sunday morning. At least that's how the route was planned. I had breakfast with Ken the next morning, and he dropped the bomb on me. None of the executive directors were on the island. In fact, there were only 4 managers on the island. I was angry at first, but Ken assured me that this was the perfect opportunity to move up the list. Immediately after breakfast, we headed to one of the bungalows. He knocked on the door and entered the room. Alan Jenkins was inside. I knew Al from work. Al was the manager of the accounting department. He was a real accountant and looked the part. Al was barely 5 feet 6 inches and weighed over 240 pounds. He wore thick glasses and squinted all the time. He looked like a fat hedgehog with his hair slicked back. In fact, Harry was a good description of Al. He had thick hair on every visible part of his body. From the moment Jim and I walked in, Al's eyes followed me everywhere I went. They chatted for a couple of minutes, and then Ken looked at his watch. "Lisa, you're lucky," he said. "Do you know how many of our colleagues would like to be in your place? They would probably all want to be where you are now. As you know, there are 4 managers at our level, and with George leaving at the end of the month, most of the people who even have the slightest chance fight tooth and nail for his position. I get many offers to buy me lunch or do anything for me." "Me too," said Al. "They just don't stop." "Lisa, you already have my vote," he said. "But 1 vote from the top 4 managers just puts you on the list. That's why Al is here. Al's vote could do a lot to move you up that list." "What will it take to get Al's vote?" I asked. "I'm already saving the company money by maintaining office supply lists and purchasing from the cheapest suppliers. I make sure we turn off the lights whenever possible and recycle as many things as possible." "We noticed your contribution," Al said nervously. "You just need something to stand out, Lisa," Ken said. "What could I do?" I thought about this as Al looked at me nervously. It was just a pleasure, and it could mean that 2 of the 4 managers would be on my side. I slowly reached for Al's zipper. Ken returned exactly 30 minutes later, as promised. We returned to my room. "Brush your teeth," he said. As soon as I did that, we left and went to another bungalow. This time, the bungalow belonged to Derek Martin. Derek was a tall, thin black guy. He was the production manager and one of the most important people in the company. When Ken left me with Derek, I knew what would happen. I pleased Derek, and then he had sex with me. Ken returned and took me back to my room. We didn't even talk to each other. I took a shower and put on a robe. "Get dressed, we're not finished yet," he said. "But I already have 3 out of 4 votes," I said. "Lisa, you haven't gotten the most important one yet," he said. "If you really want to take George's place, then George being willing to train you in the last few weeks before he leaves will be a big help." I followed him to George's room. George was 80 years old. Even after taking a Viagra pill and waiting 20 minutes, the best I could do for George was to give him a slight tingle down there. After nearly 90 minutes with George, it was almost time for dinner. I ate dinner alone in my room and felt terrible. I hated Ken, but I hated myself even more. Led Zeppelin had a song called Stairway to Heaven, and I felt like I was on Stairway to Hell. My path to damnation was a series of very small steps from a faithful wife to a full-fledged bitch. Like all things, it started with a dream. I had a dream of becoming an important woman. When I saw my chance, my mind was filled with advertising slogans from beer companies and sportswear. They always say, "Just do it, go for it," or "Don't be afraid." And we've all been told for as long as I can remember that he who gives up never wins, and a winner never gives up. So I pursued my dream and found myself in the middle of the competition. It was also a competition that, according to the documents, I could not win. There were many people who had higher or simply better degrees than me. There were people with more technical knowledge than me. All I proved was that I was willing to give a larger piece of my soul. So at this point, I might still get that promotion, but will it be worth it? It was one small step in my descent into hell that started this journey. Ken and I were friends, and I made one small wrong move. I thought it wouldn't go any further. I thought this action would take me forward. This turned into me being essentially his sex toy, but now he was renting me out to his co-workers. After dinner, I decided to call Jeff. I just needed to hear the sound of his voice. I needed to talk to my children. I needed something to make me feel human and loved again. It didn't happen. After dinner, Ken and the other 3 came to my room for the main event. They took turns having sex with me and forced me to satisfy them until the condoms ran out, but they didn't run out of steam. After they left, I curled up on the floor. Like me, they were all married and happy, with the exception of George. Then I wondered why they were risking their careers and marriages. I wasn't some kind of sex goddess. Hell, the only man who loved me was my own husband, Jeff. I'm not some tall blonde from Sweden. I'm a short brunette with small breasts, glasses, and a thick ass. It just didn't make sense. None of these men interested me, and they all seemed to love their wives. As we were waiting to board the boat the next morning, I heard some of them talking. "I can't believe she let us do this to her," Al said. "Ken, you almost had special sex with her. Does your wife allow you to do this?" "Hell no," Ken said. "My wife is not an easily accessible girl. You are crazy. Last month, I knew we had something going on. Think about it. We can meet with the manager regularly and have sex with her as much as we want. And I guarantee you that by the end of the month, it will be not just me, but all of us. This weekend, I just wanted to relax her. Damn, this bitch went way further than we expected. She never said no. And the best part," Derek began, "it's that by promoting her to manager, we don't have to worry about some smart young college graduate coming in and making us look bad. We're promoting the only person in the entire company who's actually no smarter than us, to threaten our jobs. Plus, we can sleep with her as much as we want," Ken said. "All the dirty things your wives won't let you do with them, you can do with Lisa. Not only does it improve the company, it improves our marriages. We don't need to keep pissing off our wives by pestering them about things they don't want to do." "What about her marriage?" Al asked. "To hell with it," Ken replied. "Remember, she started it all. She came to me. I didn't ask her to satisfy me, and she could always say no. She clearly doesn't love her husband. Or maybe the poor guy just can't cope. Maybe he is one of those guys who's too nice to give a bitch what she wants. Didn't you hear her moaning and squealing last night? She loved it. I wanted to approach them at that moment to silence them, but I couldn't. First, I needed to dry my tears. Everything they said hurt me. I knew that sometimes you have to be ruthless and selfish to succeed in business, but I never expected something like this. They were right. I moaned and screamed as they used me at night, but it was from pain. The idea that I didn't love my husband was so absurd that I didn't even consider it. The rest was just offensive. They clearly thought I was an idiot. My only value to the company was my inferiority and stupidity, and perhaps they were right. In the end, I allowed a group of fat, aged middle managers who were afraid of losing their jobs to the younger ones, smart employees, to choose me to replace a retiring colleague. And I did it not just because I'm stupid, but because I'll give them all of me they want and do what their wives won't do. I walked past them and immediately headed to the upper deck of the boat. As I walked up the stairs, I could still hear them talking about me. "Hey, do either of you want to go into that little cabin in the back and have sex with her on the boat?" asked Ken. "Damn, I'm still tired from last night," Al said. "I had more sex last night than I have since I got married." "And the best thing about it," Derek said, "is that the bitch doesn't complain. With my wife, every time she gives me, I have to practically kiss her ass for the next few days." "What about the damn holidays?" laughed Ken. "You know when you go and spend a couple $1,000 on an obnoxious diamond bracelet, and they just give you that bad sex they always give you and act like you should be happy with what you got." It was a long road home. During the home trip, I also learned some things about the island by listening to their conversations. It turned out that the island, La Isla Tentacion, translates as the Island of Temptation. The island was focused on love affairs and secret meetings. Lots of rich people and corporate executives wanting to cheat on their spouses have gone there. That's what the island was set up for. Therefore, there were very few activities available on the island. There was no swimming or snorkeling, no jet ski lessons. Most of the action took place in the rooms. It looked like a huge house of debauchery. When I met Jeff and our kids at the airport, I wanted to hug them until they burst. I thought about making a promise that my husband would be the happiest man on earth. Jeff won't be the same as those poor guys I spent the weekend with. As I thought about it, I realized that Jeff wasn't the same anymore. Jeff should never have begged me for sex. Jeff also got any kind of sex he wanted from me. I often satisfied her, and I really liked it. Sometimes I did it for hours, just because I love him so much. Jeff and I also went through a phase where I would regularly have special sex with him. But Jeff did it with love and consideration of my feelings. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe it wasn't that their wives didn't enjoy sex. Maybe it's because their wives didn't enjoy sex with them. I know I didn't enjoy it, and between sleep, the flight, and the boat ride home, I had almost 18 hours to recover from sex the night before. What I wanted was a nice hot bath in my own bathroom, followed by a session with my personal massage therapist husband, and then for him to make love to me slowly and lovingly, kissing me and making me feel loved. As soon as I receive confirmation of my appointment as manager, I can begin to take revenge on these scoundrels for what they did to me. This management position would be my stepping stone into the C-suite, and once I was a step above them, I would fire them all and replace them with the very young men they were so afraid of. By the middle of the week, I will probably have the job finally. I may have to do 1 or 2 more services for them during this time to make sure none of them back out of the deal. But from the moment I have this job, none of these scoundrels or any other man, except my husband, will ever touch me again. Jeff Bennett. I had just settled into work and sat down at my desk when the phone rang. "Hello," I said absently into the phone. At that moment, I was so busy looking for a table of depreciation calculations on my computer that the call was on the back burner for me. "Mr. Bennett, my name is Claire Higgins, and I need a few minutes of your time to discuss a personal matter," the woman said. The voice on the phone was unfamiliar, and her businesslike tone made me stop searching for the file and sit up straighter in my chair. I mentally went through everything I'd ever done, trying to figure out what it might be about before I responded. "Miss Higgins, I'm not sure I remember you, so you'll have to refresh my memory on any personal matter we have," I said. "Oh, very direct and to the point," she said. "That's how engineers work. Get straight to the point. No small talk, no flirting, no nonsense. I like it." "Mr. Bennett, we haven't actually met," she said, which only added to my confusion. "Do you know Patty Daniels?" she asked. "No," I said, although I must admit the name seemed familiar to me. "She's married to Ken Daniels. He works with your wife," she said. "Okay, now I remember," I said. But Patty and I didn't really talk much. We went out to dinner a couple of times with our spouses, but Patty and I didn't interact much. To be honest, I remember her as very beautiful, but if she was standing in front of me, I'm not sure that I could recognize her from the crowd, so "You don't see what you two have in common, do you?" she asked. "Exactly," I said. "Mr. Bennett, you and Miss Daniels do have a lot in common, but I'd rather not discuss the details over the phone," she said. "Would you like to meet us at my office for a lunch meeting?" "I don't think that's possible," I said. "I already left work early on Friday to take my wife to the airport. I need to focus and work today." "So I suggested meeting at lunchtime," she said. "Trust me, Mr. Bennett, you really want to be at this meeting." "Give me your address," I said reluctantly, "and I'll be there at noon." She dictated the address to me, and I wrote it down on a notepad that was lying on my desk. "Mr. Bennett, perhaps you should inform your assistant or colleagues that you may not be back until tomorrow," she said. "I'm sure once you know what it's all about, you won't feel like working for the rest of the day." After a cheerful goodbye, she hung up. 11:45 a.m., I was speeding down the freeway, weaving through slow traffic. The powerful roar of my Mustang's exhaust system let slow-moving cars know I was nearby. I hated driving on the freeway during the lunch rush hour. It always seemed like no one knew where he was going. And damn, older drivers are simply the worst. There's always that 200-year-old man who can barely see above the steering wheel while driving 17 miles an hour in the fast lane and wondering why everyone around him is honking. I arrived at the address I was given with 5 minutes to spare. The building was a beautifully designed office building on a fairly busy street. I walked in and asked the woman at the information desk for the office number they gave me. Following her instructions, I took the elevator to the 5th floor and immediately found the office. A sign mounted in the office's large glass doors simply read, "Customer Services." I realized that such a name could refer to many functions. The receptionist, who was sitting at the desk filing her nails, smiled at me as soon as I walked through the double doors. She leaned forward so I could see her huge breasts squeezed into her pale yellow silk blouse. She had very light blonde hair and a tan too deep to be natural. If she had spent enough time in the sun to achieve that tan, she would have been burned to a crisp and her skin would have had the consistency of leather and a lot of melanomas. But instead, her skin was darker than her hair and had the sheen of youth, although the color was what is called orange, a skin color reserved for women who spend too much time in tanning salons and undergo plastic surgery in the hope of winning a rich husband. She smiled at me even wider as I approached the counter and showed me her white teeth. I could barely restrain myself from laughing in her face. When I told her who I was, she stood up to escort me to the office I was going to, and I received another shock. She must have been at least 6'6" in her 5-inch stilettos. She had huge breasts that were obviously artificial, a narrow waist, and no buttocks at all. Thin hips and small legs completed the picture. The woman was completely unsexual. It's funny, but if you take all the supposed attributes that men like, she had all of them, but to the extreme, and it actually made her less attractive. In her case, the whole was clearly less than the sum of the parts. Each individual part, large breasts, narrow waist, small neat ass, and sculpted legs, could be many women's strengths. But when all this was combined in her, something terrible turned out. I entered the office and found 2 women waiting for me. One of them handed the other a napkin. The crying woman was beautiful. I recognized her immediately. "Hi, Patty," I said. When she turned her head and looked at me, I noticed her thick brown hair and beautiful green eyes. Everything fell into place. She came over a few times with her husband, and we both just sat while our spouses and a couple of other people who all worked together discussed things that neither of us knew about. Patty was not a small woman by any means. She was probably what is now called complete. She had big breasts and a big ass, but she still maintained a very feminine hourglass shape that many men would adore. She probably wasn't going to walk the runway in Paris, but if she had decided to walk down an ordinary street, she would have left chaos, accidents, and twisted necks in her wake. The other woman, the blonde, was completely engrossed in the matter. I instantly recognized her voice on the phone. "Just in time, Mr. Bennett," she said. I nodded back to her. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "I called you here out of politeness. You can leave my office at any time, including right now. I didn't call you here to ask for money or ruin your life. This has absolutely nothing to do with me. Plus, since Patty has already paid for my services, you can actually use the material I provide for free. Of course, I will recommend another service and perhaps even one of our staff, depending on how you decide to proceed, but you are under no obligation to use our services." I nodded, although I was still confused as to why I was here. "How well do you know Patty's husband, Ken?" she asked. "Not very good," I replied. "My wife works with him. He seems like a nice guy. They have 2 children, like Lisa and me. I guess that's all I can say." "So, you would say that you and he are basically the same type of man?" she asked. "Perhaps," I said. "We're about the same age, and we're at about the same stage in our careers and family development." "No, it's not," she said. "You are a family man. You love your children and take care of them. You love your wife and take care of her. Besides, you are not cheating on her. You also don't flirt openly with other women. The first time we brought Ken here, he struggled to get Rachel, our secretary, into bed. We keep it on this table as a test. You didn't even look twice at her, even when she gave you the opportunity to see her charms." I shrugged. However, Ken was caught cheating on Patty more than once. The last time she told him that if he was caught again, their marriage was over. She turned on the TV with the remote control, and an image of an empty office appeared on the screen. There was a timer in the upper left corner of the screen. She fast-forwarded the video until activity appeared on the screen. A man I recognized as Ken walked into the office and sat down at the desk. For a long time he was busy with documents. She also rewound it. The woman entered the office and spoke to him. After a few minutes of conversation, she locked the door and he walked to the front of the table. He leaned back on the table while she pleasured him. Patty started crying again. I was angry as I watched. Not because it was particularly exciting, no. Then she stood up, unlocked the door, and left the room. Even if the camera hadn't caught her face as she left the room, I would have recognized both her body and the dress she was wearing. It was my wife, Lisa. I was shocked. 1,000 questions, thoughts, and feelings fought for dominance in my head. The biggest and loudest, of course, was, why? My eyes narrowed, and I was about to ask a question, but I noticed Claire raised her hand, fast-forwarding to the next thing she wanted to show us. A very similar scene took place in the hotel room. This was taken on a business trip this weekend, Claire said. On screen, Ken and Lisa went to another hotel room. Lisa satisfied another man, this short, plump guy. God, how much of this is there? I asked. That's enough, Claire said. The next video she showed was even worse. It showed Lisa not only satisfying, but having sex with a black guy I had never seen before. Then there was a video of her having sex with a man who was older than her father. The last part was some kind of sex with all these men at the same time. I was shocked. I noticed Claire lean over to give Patty more napkins. Then I noticed that she was actually handing them to me. My cheeks were burning and my eyes were burning. Then I realized that Patty was not the only person in the room who was crying. I took some tissues, wiped my face, and then took a couple of deep breaths. Surprisingly, I couldn't think of anything to say. Then I noticed that one of my hands was gripping the edge of the table so tightly that I thought I might break the thick wood resin. The other hand was squeezing Patty's hand. It doesn't get any easier, Patty said quietly. It doesn't matter whether it's the first time or the 5th. It breaks your heart every time. But this time will be the last. I've forgiven him other times, but I can't do it anymore. I kept thinking that maybe it was because of the stress at work, or because my children need a father. The last time I even thought that maybe I pushed him into this because I didn't sleep with him very often. It was because he had deceived me so many times that I simply could not trust him. This time I probably thought that maybe it's because I'm not a skinny girl, so I'm not very sexy. But when I saw the first part of this video, I realized that your wife is not like that either. I'm tired of making excuses for him and blaming myself. I'm just tired of him. I asked Claire to call you because, well, you seem like a really nice guy. Ken jokes about you all the time in some of the tapes I have at home. He says how you take care of your children so that he can have sex with your wife. I just wanted you to know what's going on because if I were in your shoes and I'm in his shoes, I would want to know. I started to say. Mr. Bennett, Jeff, Claire said, don't make hasty decisions. Stop, take a deep breath, and think about what you want to do. Call me tomorrow, and I will help you decide what to do. None of us know her motivation. I can tell you this has been going on for at least a month leading up to this weekend. We don't know why this happened, or even how it started. You, like Mrs. Daniels, must think about the children. There are many factors to consider. I would recommend you not to make hasty decisions. I just found out that the woman I've been married to for almost 20 years turns out to be an easy-to-get corporate bitch apparently, and you think I'm making a hasty decision? I shouted. I want this bitch out of my life, I screamed. I don't want her anywhere near my kids. Then you need to proceed with extreme caution, Claire said, because the courts can be extremely stupid when it comes to custody issues. Even if your wife is addicted to something, in most cases they will provide primary care to the mother. You need to act as if everything is fine until we have completed all the formalities. Do you already have a lawyer, or would you like to hire one of ours? Can we split the lawyer and save money since it's the same case? Asked Patty. Yes, that's possible, Claire replied. Jeff, Patty intends to seek a divorce with full custody, alimony, child support, the family home, part of Ken's pension, and 50% of the remaining property. She is also pursuing a case against your wife and the company they both work for. I just want this bitch out of my life, I said. But I will join the lawsuit against the company and sue Ken for ruining my life. I also want custody of my children and our home, so that my children can maintain some aspects of their lives as normal. I'm not going to pay this bitch alimony or a penny from my pension. I spoke with a lot more anger in my voice than I intended, but I meant every word. Jeff, you need to calm down, Claire said. If you come home like this, she'll know you know what's going on. I'll make an appointment with your lawyer for tomorrow. Today, you need to act as if nothing has changed. If all goes well, we should be able to have the paperwork ready for filing on Thursday or Friday. I need to go to the doctor and get tested for STDs, I said. Hopefully, I can calm down enough to seem normal by the time I'm usually home. I stood up and prepared to leave. I felt a soft, warm hand squeeze mine. If you need someone to talk to, you can always call me, Patty said. Thank you, I said as I left. As soon as I got home, I gave the kids their usual after-school snack and looked in the freezer to see what I should start making for dinner. It was easy because I was on autopilot. A person looking at me might think that everything was fine, but inside me a cauldron of mixed feelings was boiling. I took some hot dogs out of the freezer for the kids and a couple of steaks for Lisa and me. Just thinking about her name makes me grow even more angry. I ran with the children across the yard. Their laughter and the noise we made soon attracted a couple of their friends knocking on the gate. I let in 2 children from a neighboring house and sat on the swing on the terrace to watch them play. I wondered why Lisa could do what I saw. I knew there were 2 sides to every story, but I just couldn't think of any way to look at this situation that would allow us to stay together. I am a modern man, not a dinosaur. I know about sex clubs and open marriages. I also know that in many cases there are aggravating circumstances. I believe in marriage vows, but at the same time I understand that people sometimes have needs in relationships that are not met. And perhaps if what I saw had been an isolated incident or a one-off, I would have been hurt and Lisa would have had her work cut out for her to keep us together. But what she did over the weekend destroyed any chance of that. Satisfaction in Ken's office was done so casually that she must have done it before, and probably for quite a long time, because she was too skilled at it. She didn't even have to tell him what to do or ask him. She just came in and got straight to work and then left. Neither of them worried about it or acted like it was anything special. This also meant that it had happened before and probably relatively often. A trip to this island resort over the weekend got me thinking about what happened the other times they went on business trips together. From what I saw, Lisa almost had sex with every man she encountered if he even hinted that he wanted sex. It was just too much for me. I know the honest and open way to resolve this is to confront Lisa as soon as she walks in the door and tell her what I saw and ask for a divorce. But she wasn't honest with me, so she didn't deserve honesty in return. Plus, my goal in doing this wasn't to end up supporting her for the rest of my life. My goal is to leave her, hopefully so that I still have custody of our children. I had experts working with me, so it would be stupid not to listen to their advice. I also wanted revenge on that scoundrel Ken. The guy was at my house. He sat at my table and ate my food. We might not have been friends, but he owed me better than to sneak around and sleep with my wife, spreading her around among his co-workers. No matter how this ends, Ken will pay for his role in all of this. I knew Patty was divorcing him, but I needed my own measure of revenge. Even as I began to think about what I would do with him, Lisa drove up to our house. Normally, I would get up and go out to meet her, but I had to make an effort to even look in her direction. She came up and hugged me, and I half-heartedly hugged her back. She looked at me strangely. "Would you like to come in and watch me change?" She smiled, hinting at something more. "I have to look after the children," I said. For some reason, they are playing too hard today. Maybe we should cut down on the sugar. Why don't you change your clothes and then come back here and sit with me for a while?" She smiled and headed into the house. I slapped my forehead a couple of times. I realized I needed to get my act together if I was going to pull this off. I had to come up with an excuse before she returned. I had so much time, and all I did was spend it thinking and wondering why she did what she did. I felt sorry for myself, wondering what I did wrong or what I didn't do right, when the truth was that she was the one who ruined everything. Then suddenly I felt bile rising from my stomach as I thought about the possibility that she might want to have sex with me. That was ruled out. Hell, my STD test results wouldn't be back for a couple of days, but I wasn't willing to take any more chances. I was grateful that last night, after I picked her up from the airport, she was in the mood for a massage and cuddles. I went for it because it had been a couple of days since we had sex and I wanted her. Tingy was really angry because after the massage and caresses she fell asleep. It was someone upstairs watching me, but at that moment I was really angry. I even thought about having sex with her while she was sleeping. But now, less than 24 hours after that, I was trying to think of ways to avoid having sex with her. Things really change when we look at them from a different perspective. By the time she returned, I had already put the meat on the grill. I had to go back for more hot dogs because when the parents of the kids next door came to get them, we all sat on the deck talking about things, and I offered to feed them and their kids too. I ended up talking about baseball and lawnmowers with my neighbor Ted, even though I wasn't interested. Ted must be the most boring person on the planet. But at that moment, he was my best friend. He distracted me from having to talk to my wife. But God knows I paid for it and probably will in the future. I had to listen to him talk endlessly about his damn Toyota Prius. The hardest part was keeping a straight face when he talked about how women loved the car. I could imagine them all lining up for a ride in his Prius. I could barely restrain myself from asking him when they would make a version for real men of the Prius. Or when they make a version so that you don't have to bend over when you ride in it, so that no one you know can see you. I even got into an argument with him about efficiency. "Jeff, I get 45 miles per gallon, and your Mustang GT gets 22, so I get twice the mileage to the gallon." "But I get there in half the time," I said. "No, it doesn't work," he said. "My car goes 60 miles an hour in 5 seconds," I said. "Your Prius goes to 60. Can this thing even go to 60? Anyway, your Prius gets to 60 in maybe an hour and a half." "Much faster," he countered. "Up to 60 in." He took the stats card out of his pocket and looked at it. 17 seconds, he said solemnly. "A city bus accelerates 4 times in 11 seconds, I laughed. "Garbage truck for 15. I pulled out my iPhone, but couldn't find the 0-60 time for the Amish wagon and horse. What was terrible about this was that the entire time I was talking to Ted, I knew he was taking this seriously. I could see the wheels and gears in his brain starting to turn as he began to think that there would be more conversations in the future. There won't be any. I felt like a jerk for using Ted, but making fun of his teardrop-shaped skateboard was much better than wasting time talking to Lisa. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I pretended to be asleep when Lisa came into bed. The next morning, I pretended to still be very tired when she got up. Patty called me, and we talked for about half an hour during the workday. I think it was beneficial for both of us. She told me about Claire's plan to inform our spouses about the upcoming divorces. It also let me know that Claire has an evil streak. Of course, this meant that I would have to continue pretending for a couple more days, but I thought I could pull it off. I told Patty how difficult the first night was, and she laughed as I talked about my conversation with Ted and how I tried to avoid sex with Lisa. She gave me some tips on how to do it, and I asked her how she came up with them. I told her that if I was married to her, they wouldn't work because I would be chasing her every day, and she laughed again. We seemed to get along quite well. I used her advice, and it really helped. Finally, on Thursday, I told Lisa that I had to go on a business trip for the weekend. After a week without sex, she got really angry. I reminded her that last weekend when she was out of town, I had to do everything myself. I also reminded her that my parents would be taking the kids to visit our uncle's farm so she wouldn't have to babysit them, so she calmed down. While I was packing my clothes on Thursday evening, she watched me. I packed running gear and other sports equipment, like my golf gloves and sunglasses and swimming trunks. "It looks like you're not going on a business trip," she said. "Well, the resort we're going to is on an island," I said. "So there's probably a lot to do there." "Which island?" she asked. I took the brochure Claire gave me. "It's called La Isla Tentacion," I said, and her face went pale. "Lisa." Everything started to come together. This weekend was supposed to be the best weekend of my life. On Monday, my company was supposed to announce that I would be the new manager when George retired. I had to sleep with Ken once in the past week, but I avoided him the rest of the time. He didn't like it, but he'd have to get used to it. As far as I knew, the sex train had derailed. What really angered me was that Jeff seemed to be avoiding me. We haven't had sex since I returned from the resort. For Jeff to not be constantly horny towards me was extremely unusual, but for him to not even want to spend time with me was simply unheard of. This has never happened in our entire life together, and now I understand why. As much as it tears me up, my husband may be having an affair. Just the thought of it filled me with anger and made me want to cry. But perhaps I was hasty with conclusions. Maybe I was just transferring my guilt onto him. Jeff just isn't the type to cheat. When I thought about it, I realized that I didn't consider myself a cheater, but that's exactly what I was doing. In addition, I also put my career and my job second, or even third after my family. At that moment, I realized how stupid I had been. I needed to do something about it. The problem was, what the hell could I do? I couldn't tell Jeff not to go to the island. If I did that, I'd have to come up with a reason why he shouldn't go there. I would have to tell him what this island is and what happens there. In truth, Jeff didn't seem to understand what was going on there. If he had known, he wouldn't have packed all that stupid sports gear. Somebody else probably planned it without telling some or all of the others what was going on there. I didn't think Jeff would cheat on me, but what if he found out what was going on? I have to admit that I have been neglecting and cheating on my husband for months. Would I really be shocked if he found someone else? Jeff was still a very attractive man. I'm sure some of those divorced or single female engineers wouldn't mind having his shoes under their bed, even if it was just temporary. I was determined to offer him the best sex of our lives that evening. I had to let him know that no bitch could give him what I could give him, and that I would do it better and more. Of course, it didn't work out that way. He got into bed, kissed my forehead like I was some damn pet, and then rolled over and tried to sleep. When I brought up the fact that we hadn't had sex all week, he pretended it hadn't even crossed his mind. "I'll make it up to you when I get back, honey," he said. "But I need to save my energy for the trip." I was so angry with him that I just rolled over and fell asleep. Even my dreams were spoiled, as I saw dream after dream of Jeff having fun on that island with some slender, sexy, young female engineer with large breasts who had not given birth to 2 children. In the dream, I also saw him returning home and continuing to look at me with the same look that he had been giving me all week. That look said, "Well, I love my 2003 Mustang, but these new 2013s are awesome. Maybe it's time for an upgrade." When I woke up in the morning, I was so angry that I hit him on the head while he was sleeping. I was still furious when I went to work. As I slammed my desk shut as hard as I could, I saw Ken in his office. When we locked eyes, I realized that he was expecting. I thought that perhaps I could limit myself to satisfying him. But this will be the last time he touches me. They'll make an announcement on Monday and I'll be safe. What will he do after this? Will he cancel his recommendation because I refused to have sex with him? Oh, I don't think so. I walked into his office, and instead of smiling at me with his strange smile, he continued to glare at me. "What do you want, Lisa?" he asked. "I just thought that." I started. "Sorry," he said. "Not now. Probably not at all today. Just not in the mood." I closed the door. I've heard that not in the mood way too often. Ken, what happened? I asked. I'm asking as a friend. Lisa, I sense a disturbance in the marriage, he said. Something strange is happening. Patty told me yesterday that I had to take the kids to her parents for the weekend if I didn't want to watch them myself. She's going on a business trip. Even when he said this, I also felt something strange. Maybe she's just trying to get you to pay attention to her and even the odds, I said. Maybe she just wants you to understand that when you go away on our trips, she has to be in control. Besides, you were on the weekend last time. Maybe her work requires her participation too. Lisa, he said, looking at me as if I were stupid. Patty is not working. She doesn't have a damn job. How can she go on a business trip if taking care of me and our children is her job? He was almost on the verge of screaming. And you know what's the worst? He asked. I shook my head, but my spider sense was already kicking in. Guess where she's going? He asked. To Temptation Island? I asked. Absolutely true, he said. His voice shook with emotion. I don't want my wife to go to Temptation Island. There is nothing there except food, sleep, and sex. And I don't think she goes there for food. I just ruined everything. I know this is just the beginning. Damn, I hate tuna. What are you talking about? I asked. Lisa, our marriage is not like yours. On the surface, we are happy. But this is mainly for the sake of the children. I cheated on Lisa several times. The last time she told me that if this happened again, she would divorce me and take every damn penny I made. She said I would live in a refrigerator box under a bridge, eating tuna straight from the can. I hate tuna, he began to sob. I was shocked. I remembered Jeff looking at Patty a lot when we had dinner with Patty and Ken. Patty was younger than me and probably prettier. Even after 2 children, she had the best body. Ken said she didn't like sex. Now I realized that it was probably because Ken was cheating on her and also because he was bad in bed. Oh shit, I exclaimed. I wonder if this is a coincidence. What? He asked. Jeff is leaving this weekend too, I said, and guess where he's going? We both looked at each other as if we had been struck by lightning. She left at 7 a.m., he said. Jeff leaves at 9, I said. If I hurry, I can meet him at the airport and stop him. Go, he said. I grabbed my purse and ran out of the office. I quickly pressed the elevator button and waited for almost 5 damn minutes before one of the interns pointed to a sign that said the elevator was out of service. I quickly rushed up the flight of stairs and went down the first 3 floors, after which I had to stop to catch my breath. But as soon as my heart stopped pounding against my ribs, I walked the remaining 4 floors down. Then I ran out to my waiting Volvo station wagon. For the first time in the 10 years that I owned this car, it refused to start. The car was safe in the parking lot, so I hailed a taxi and headed to the airport. My walk through the airport reminded me of all those Hertz Oj Simpson commercials I saw when I was a kid. Of course, this was before he killed his wife and lost all his contracts and got fat. As I dodged one person after another, I turned sharply and maneuvered among them. On you, OJ, I thought. Just before the departure area, I noticed an elderly man bending down to tie his shoelace. There was no time to stop. They were already closing the door, so I jumped through it like OJ. About, Jay, I thought quietly. No, Jay, the reel shouted loudly B. As soon as I jumped over the old man, he straightened up. My back leg caught his shoulder, and I waved awkwardly in the air. Oh shit, I screamed as the ground approached. I fell on my chin so hard that I lost consciousness. I came to a small, cramped medical room at the airport. The force of the impact caused me to break a couple of teeth as my jaws closed. I also had a huge bruise on my chin and a small cut that required 3 stitches. I stood up and wondered why my skirt was hiked up to my waist. As I stood up, a guard entered the room and looked at me confused. She has come to her senses, he shouted. Sorry for that. We had to search for you. Another man in a suit looked at me strangely. The person you attacked is suing you, he said. I didn't attack anyone, I said. The old idiot stopped right in front of me. It was either try to jump over him or crash into him. He smiled and shook his head. The next thing I knew, I was moved to another room, where I lay on the couch while an older woman with glasses examined me and asked questions. "Let's think about it," she said. "You decide, in the middle of a busy airport, to try to jump over a grown man." She paused and adjusted her glasses. "What was your rationale?" "I was thinking about those old Hertz commercials with OJ, I said. "So you, a white woman in your 40s, out of shape, imagine that you are a young, agile, athletic black man with murderous tendencies," she asked. "No, I was just in a hurry," I said. "I was trying to catch up with my husband, so I introduced myself to OJ. And, so you wanted to kill your husband?" she asked. "Is it because they're allowing knives on board again?" "No, I didn't want to kill anyone," I screamed. "And she is not his mistress. We just worked a lot and probably both felt neglected." "Are you psychic now?" she asked. "No, I'm not a damn psychic," I screamed. "I just didn't want him to get on that damn plane and do the worst thing possible. Biggest mistake of my life." "Subject is easily excitable," she said as she wrote it down. "The subject uses obscene language and—" I got up and left, leaving her to write. As soon as I left the office, they took my name and information. I was given several sheets of paper, and as I looked through them, I noticed that one of them was a subpoena. The old man I tried to jump over actually sued me. He demanded $1 million. The weird part was that he wasn't even hurt. Another piece of paper was a bill for a psychiatric examination. I went to the information desk and learned that the next plane was leaving in 15 minutes. I couldn't believe I had to pay twice what the company paid for our flight here just a week ago. The woman at the desk told me that booking a ticket last minute is always more expensive. I was sleeping on the plane, and the pain in my chin started to get worse when the painkillers wore off. I assumed Jeff's plane left at least an hour before mine. I'll probably also have to wait for the ferry to get to the island. Ferries ran every 2 hours. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to meet Jeff at the pier. If not, he will have a 2-hour afterburner. I doubted that Jeff and Patty would just get off the ferry and start having sex, so I still had a chance to stop everything before anything started, even if I missed the ferry. I missed the ferry. I also had to pay an incredible amount to get on the ferry because I wasn't on the list. The ferry ride was free for registered guests, but since I didn't have a reservation, they felt free to charge me a fare. As soon as we arrived on the island, I looked around. I was hoping that maybe I would see Jeff, but that didn't happen. Just as I was preparing to curse my almost biblical streak of bad luck, I heard a familiar laugh. This really made me feel bad because it had been quite a while since I had heard him laugh. I looked around and saw him. I was shocked. Jeff didn't sit at the table with Patty. It was much worse. My husband was sitting at the table with a tall blonde with neverness figure. She constantly looked into his eyes and nodded her head. She also reached out to stroke his arm from time to time. A few minutes later, they got up from the table and headed towards the exit. They were not walking towards the main hotel building, but towards the bungalow. It was even worse than it could have been. At least in the main building, people had to be more reserved. Bungalows were meant to do things in a place where everyone was so busy doing their own thing that no one cared what anyone else was doing. I hid behind bushes and trees, following them. The bitch led my husband into some kind of den of depravity. The further we walked, the angrier I became, until finally they entered one of the more secluded bungalows. They had been there less than 5 minutes when something even more unexpected happened. Another woman, so young she seemed to be a student, knocked on the door and walked inside. She, like the first woman, was blonde. I never knew that my husband had a weakness for blondes. There was something else that bothered me. When they opened the door to let the second woman in, I noticed that Jeff's luggage was in the room. Since the woman he entered the room with had a key card, it meant they were sharing a room. The young blonde made me think my husband was going to be the meat in some blonde sandwich. I couldn't stand it. I got up and quickly ran to the door. I could hear laughter and fun from inside the room, and it intensified as I approached. I knocked on the door as hard as I could and tried to turn the knob. She turned easily. I forced the door open and noticed that the four of them were sitting at the table. There were no beds in the room. It was some kind of private conference room. Jeff and the woman he was having lunch with sat on one side of the table. A young blonde woman chewing gum sat in front of them, and on the right side was a middle-aged woman with brown hair. Jeff looked up at me. He looked very sad. My heart ached looking at him, and I realized I had made a mistake. All three were fully dressed. There were papers on the table in front of them. "Keep going," the first woman told Jeff. "You can do it." "Hi, Lisa," Jeff said. His voice was choked, and I thought I saw tears on his cheeks. "Jeff, honey, what's going on here?" I asked. I was worried. "It looks like you are keeping some kind of records or discussing some kind of plan, but do you know what usually happens at this resort?" "We were just preparing papers for you, Lisa," he said. Every word seemed torn from the depths of his soul. "What papers?" I asked. None of this made sense. "I guess that's my signal," said the young blonde. She brushed her curly blonde hair back and picked up a stack of papers from her desk. "Lisa Bennett?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She turned to Jeff. "That's her?" she asked. He nodded. She handed me the papers. "You have been handed it," she said. "Damn, that was easy. I can't believe you paid me all this money and brought me to this beautiful island for just 5 minutes of work." She clicked her gum a few times and then left the bungalow. I stood there in shock, holding a stack of papers, and then looked through them. At first I thought it was a joke, but when I looked at the table, I saw that neither Jeff nor the blonde at the table were laughing. "Jeff, I don't want a divorce," I said. "You have to let me explain. On what grounds do we need a divorce? I admit that I neglected you and the children, but it was." The brunette's head suddenly lifted, as if she had somehow been turned on. "So you admit that you neglected your husband and children?" she asked. "So who took care of the children?" "Well, they weren't really neglected," I said. "Jeff is their father. He cared about them. I just didn't help much, but all that is behind me. In a few weeks, maybe a couple of months at most, I will adapt to." I stopped. Suddenly, I realized that everyone in the room was looking at me. See, I was focusing a lot on my career, so Jeff had to take on more responsibilities, I continued. "Define taking on more responsibilities," the woman asked. "Well, that's why children need 2 parents," I said. "Hell, according to Hillary, it takes a village to raise a child." I tried to make them laugh, but none of them seemed to have a sense of humor. "While I'm going through this busy period, Jeff just has to do a little more, but he's getting by," I said, still smiling. "He's a super dad." "Define Jeff does a little extra," she asked. "Well, he wakes them up and makes them breakfast," I said. "He takes them to school and buys or cooks their lunches. He picks them up from school, gives them snacks and helps them with homework and plays with them. He, cooks and does most of the cleaning. He takes them to lessons and school events and—" "So what are you doing?" she asked. I'm there. Mom," I said. She just looked at me and shook her head. "Even if I hadn't seen the video after what you just said, I would still grant Mr. Derv Bennett temporary custody based on what you said," she told me. "You need to get yourself together and make a choice, lady. See you in court. Mr. Bennett, expect several home visits during the process. We will need to study the living conditions for the children. I will contact you." Then she collected her briefcase and also left the room. "Jeff," I squeaked. "I'm sorry. I admit it. I neglected you and the children. But this is not a reason for divorce. This is a reason to sit down and talk about our problems." "I'm not divorcing you for this reason," he said. "I am divorcing you for cheating on me with your boss and those other men." He pressed a button on the remote, and the video started playing. I felt sick looking at myself. "Please, Jeff. Let me explain," I said. The blonde stood up and raised her hand. "Mrs. Bennett, it would be best for everyone if you sought legal advice before making any statements. The documents that were handed to you fully explain our position. I think my client is being generous given the circumstances. But however, I must tell you that his proposal for divorce due to irreconcilable differences is only valid for 5 days. After this, he will give Ansk on the grounds of adultery, which is still legal in this state. I also have to tell you this, just like you. I saw that he had enough evidence to prove it, and that if this evidence got into the court records, you would have a very difficult time in the career for which you left your family. I didn't abandon my family, I said quietly. All I did was. Lisa, I make enough money that you never have to work, Jeff said slowly. Even if you work as a secretary for the rest of your life, every penny you bring home will be gravy. So almost everything you did was for yourself. As he continued, his words became louder and stronger. What the hell do I get from you, Ken? He asked. And the children? Did their mother never have time to play with them because she fucked 4 men besides their father, really did a lot for them? But you don't understand, I said. I get a lawyer, he said. He and the blonde then collected the rest of the papers and started to leave. Jeff, we need to talk about this, I whined. We'll do it, he said. Hire a lawyer. Jeff and the blonde left the bungalow and headed back to the dock. I ran after them. Jeff, we're already here, I said. Why don't we stay and talk? We'll figure it out. It'll be like a second honeymoon. We went to Hawaii for our second honeymoon 4 years ago, he said. Besides, I need to get home. I want to see my kids and start rebuilding my life. Let's leave the kids with your parents for the weekend like we planned, I said. That way we can discuss everything. We can't discuss anything until you get a lawyer, he said. You have other problems. You need to find a place to stay. You need to come and get your things, and you probably need to stop by work, and then the blonde interrupted him. It was as if he had said something she didn't want to hear. That's all, I asked. Is this my chance? If I quit my job, will you take me back? The porters were loading Jeff's suitcases onto the boat. They pushed me away from the boat because I didn't pay the fare, and then the boat left the dock. I took out my phone and called work. I called Ken. The phone rang about 5 times before he answered. He sounded like he was out of breath. Ken. I started before he cut me off. Bitch, he shouted at me. It's your fault. If you hadn't come to my office begging me to please you, none of this would have happened. I will lose my wife, children, and home because of you. I hate you. Then the line went dead. While I was talking on the phone, the boat left, and I had to wait for the next one. Without a reservation, I again paid crazy money for the boat. I was able to get to the airport again, a few hours before Jeff's flight left. It seemed like I was always trying to catch up with him. I got home just in time to see a truck driving away from my house. The truck said, "Lock Replacement Service." I tried to open the doors and found that I could not get into my own house. I called my parents and went to live with them for a while. I told them that Jeff and I were having problems. I'm not telling them the essence of the problems. I tried calling Jeff over and over again, but he wouldn't pick up. Mom is sure that we will work everything out. You and Jeff love each other, she said. It's good that you can stay at home. Dad looked at me suspiciously. Where are my grandchildren? He asked. They're at Jeff's parents' house for the night or so, I said. They'll be home in time to go to school on Monday and... What have you done? Dad asked directly. Henry, Mom said. We don't know what happened. It's probably just a disagreement. She was kicked out of the house, not him, Dad said. The children who are with him, Martha, draw conclusions. She did something. If he did, he would be calling here, trying to sneak up on her. Instead, since she arrived, she has been calling him again and again. Think about this, Martha. If he had done this, he would have called her, trying to apologize. Mom took me to the kitchen. You can stay here as long as you need, honey, she said. But even my mother looked at me after that. I spent Saturday morning trying to reach Jeff. I think I called him 100 times, but he still didn't pick up. I had the bright idea of trying to use my parents' phone, but my dad turned it off and hid it. Wow, he said. Henry, she's our daughter, Mom said. I love her, Dad said. But I love my grandchildren too. I'm just Switzerland in this matter. I don't want Jeff to block our number because he thinks we took her side. He's quite reasonable. You know that yourself, Martha. I'm willing to bet that if you called him right now and asked if we could visit the kids as soon as they got home, he would say yes. So I don't want him to associate our number with Lisa. Plus, she has that $600 me. Fawn, why shouldn't she use it? It's an iPhone, Dad, I said, and my battery is dead. Well, load it up, he said. We have enough electricity. Just don't touch my phone. I stubbornly refused to look for a lawyer. I was sure that as soon as Jeff calmed down, we could negotiate and settle everything. Mom and I spent Sunday looking through photo albums and reminiscing, discussing some of our most cherished memories. The worst part about it was that I was almost 40 and had spent more than half my life with Jeff. We met when I was 19, so the last 20 years of my life were full of memories associated with him. I started the day trying to mend my relationship with my mom and ended it in tears because I missed my husband. This only got worse when it was time for dinner. Dad had been out all day and showed up just in time to eat as usual. He went fishing, Mom smiled, and I didn't catch anything. I actually went fishing, sort of, he said. He took out several papers from his jacket pocket and handed them to his mother. These were drawings made with pencils. At the top it said, grandfather and grandmother. Granny was misspelled. I visited my grandchildren, he said, and I'm not a damn psychoanalyst, but any idiot could see something in those damn drawings. Look at the first one, he said. It was a drawing of a large man and two smaller figures, a girl and a boy. Nearby, in a different color, was drawn another figure, which I assumed was me. Did you notice anything in this picture? He asked. Nobody told him what to draw. He drew himself, his sister, and Jeff. I asked him, what about your mom? He still had the first pencil in his hand, but he took a different color to draw you, Lisa. And you're standing away from the three of them. All three of them are smiling, but you have a sad look on your face. Jeff didn't let me ask them questions. I don't think he's ready to discuss with them what the hell is going on, but the kids know that. I looked at my feet. And Lisa, he looks like hell. It's like someone took a shovel and took his heart out of his chest. So whatever happened between you two, it hurt him a lot. But he didn't want to talk about it. If he thought he did something wrong, damn, I'm your father, he tried to get me to talk to you about it. Or he was trying to get me to convince you to give him another chance. Roman II even tried to take him by surprise a couple of times. I just asked him what he did, out of the blue. He's Piri just said that he loves you too much. A few hours later I tried again, but changed tactics. I asked him, what did you do? I thought that maybe, just maybe, this guy needed someone to talk to, maybe vent a little. He just said, I need to ask you. Henry, my mother said angrily, Lisa is our daughter, and we. Martha, Jeff is our son-in-law. Has he ever done anything to hurt Lisa that you know of? Lisa, tell your mom what Jeff did. If he hurts you, just say the word and I'll go back there and kick his ass. In this mood, he probably won't even resist. Martha, we need to support them both because that's what families do. But now he needs someone, and this is very important to you. Do you know that he didn't even tell his parents? I called Ed to see if he knew anything, and they didn't know Jack. They didn't even know that the lovers were upset with each other. I looked at my father in shock. Oh, Lisa, we are old, but we are not stupid. We did this too. Hell, we still do. How the hell do you think we got you? I'm telling you, Lisa, you need to fix this. Whatever the hell you did or didn't do, just apologize and go home. And you need to quit your damn job. Over the past year or so, half the time I come to visit, you're not even home and... He looked at me. That's the thing, isn't it? He asked. He was tired of trying to be the mother and father of these children rolled into one. He wants you to quit smoking, and you say, no, don't you? Then I just relied on my best strategy. I just started crying, and my mom looked at my dad and took me to my room. My dad just rolled his eyes and sat down in front of the TV. I spent another night in bed with the most terrible dreams coming into my head. I couldn't believe it. The next day was to be my moment of triumph, the day it all happened and Jeff wasn't there to share it with me. Somehow this moment seemed empty. The next day I came to work and tried to use my time card to log in. The watch did not accept her. I tried this 8 times until I realized that since I was now a manager, I no longer needed to swipe. I smiled. I went and sat down at my table for the last time. I noticed that Ken's office was still dark. I decided to log on to my computer and do some work. So it would have been better when they made the announcement. My login credentials were also not accepted. Then I remembered that I would be working with George until I took his place, so I headed to his office. The light was already on, but there was no one inside. As I walked out, a young guy I had seen in the office but had never met came in and threw a ton of paperwork on the desk. "Damn, George has a lot to do," I said. "Like what?" he asked. There was a puzzled expression on his face. "Well, all these documents," I said. He laughed. "George doesn't have to do all that crap," he said. He left. "Did the old bastard retire early?" I gasped. "Who's going to?" "Pensioner," he laughed. "George didn't retire. He was fired. The old bastard left me in the lurch. I'll have to figure this shit out on my own and—" The edges of my vision began to close in around me. This asshole talked like he got my job. There was no way they gave him my job. I didn't even know him. I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. I turned around and saw Eunice Parker, our HR manager. "Lisa, I need you to come with me," she said. "We'll fix everything." When we left the office, I felt better. "Forgive me, Lisa," she said. "It's all my fault. I was planning to go to work early in the morning so I could take care of everything before you arrived. But my husband Alex beat the crap out of me last night. I have to hide this Cialis to get a break. He acts like we're in our 20s again." Her face turned red as she spoke. Eunice was about 50. Tohen, we arrived at her office in the HR department. She was humming some kind of tune, sorting through papers and folders from different cabinets. It was hard for me to imagine Eunice lying on her back while her old husband made love to her. "Okay, honey," she said cheerfully. "Here's your full file and work history. Walk through the doors and up to the boardroom. They're already waiting for you." I knocked and entered the meeting room. I looked around at the 7 serious faces. Even the only woman on the council looked gloomy. That's why they needed me. They needed someone with energy. They needed someone who could inject youth and vitality into the council. All 7 together were probably about 600 years old. I smiled at them, ready for initiation. I was ready for power. "Bitch," said the one sitting in the center chair. I was amazed. "Is this how you talk to all new managers?" I asked. "Is this some kind of initiation ritual?" They looked at each other, then back at me. "Talking about management," the woman began. Her voice was as poisonous as the man's. "Do you think you can get your head out of your ass long enough for us to discuss this?" She was mean, I thought. "Okay, the reason for your dismissal," she began, and I fainted. A few moments later, someone roughly threw water on my face to wake me up. At first, I really thought I had been peed on, but then I saw one of the men holding a vase that had been full of water on the long table moments before. Apparently, the vase water contained some stinky flower nutrients. "Am I fired?" I screamed. "Hell yes," said one of the men. "We might even sue you. Our reputation is in jeopardy because of you. We'll have to settle this with your husband, and that settlement won't be small. This little sex scheme with you will look really bad for us in the press. And since this affects all 4 of our middle managers, our clients will go crazy. We considered suing you to recover some of our expenses, but we decided the best course of action was to simply fire you in disgrace. We brought you here to inform you that we are firing you with extreme cruelty. You will not receive any severance pay or recommendations. In fact, it is better for you never to tell anyone that you worked for us. Legally, we cannot denigrate you in front of those who did. Ask, but behind closed doors and unofficially we would tell everything." I heard one of them ask the other if he had peed in the flower vase again. I turned and left the room with tears in my eyes. 2 guards escorted me to the elevator. "I need to get my things," I said. "We've already cleared your table," one said. "Your box of personal effects is waiting for you." As soon as the elevator doors opened, I saw Patty coming out of the elevator. "I'm really sorry," I started, but that was all I could say before Patty hit me so hard I saw stars. Another woman, a blonde from the island, spoke to me as she brought Patty out. "Sorry," she said. "She's really worried today. She's also going to discuss her lawsuit against the company. Jeff and she are suing the company separately." I entered the elevator and silently went down to the first floor. Another guard joined us, and he handed me a huge, overflowing box containing office supplies and my personal belongings. Above was a photo of me taken on my first day of work. Someone ruined the photo by drawing small withered breasts on mine and a mustache. They also wrote "bitch" in huge letters on the photo. The box contained paper clips and all sorts of other things that didn't belong to me. I told the guard about this, and he laughed. "Nobody wants to touch these things anymore," he said, "so you can have them for yourself." When the elevator doors opened, the guards looked at me and said coldly, "See you later." As soon as I walked away from the elevator, someone hit me like a freight train and knocked me off my feet. The box shattered as the man on top of me started hitting me. Security guard took him with me. I realized it was Al. Just a week ago, he made love to me on the island. Now he was trying to beat me to a pulp. "You and your pimp ruined my life," he said. "I lost my damn job and my wife is divorcing me." He still tried to hit me while the guards were holding him down. They laughed out loud. "You better get out of here, lady," one of the guards said. "I can't believe what she got from you damn Ewoks." The other guard laughed. I just left the box where it fell and headed to my car. As soon as I approached the car, I saw another familiar face standing next to it. The tall, thin blonde was still chewing gum. She looked at me with bewilderment and then smiled. "This is my first," she said. "I've never served the same person with a subpoena twice in 3 days. Here you go." "Wait, is Jeff changing our divorce agreement?" I asked. "He said I have a week to make up my mind. I don't have a lawyer yet." "No, it's something else," she smiled. "I hope you have better luck. Have a nice day. I hate to do this, but I have to say, you got a summons." When she left, shaking her elastic ass and attracting the gaze of men, I looked at the papers. I couldn't believe it. Ken sued me for sexual harassment. I got into the car and called him. "I shouldn't talk to you," he said. "Why the hell did you sue me?" I asked. "You started first," he whined. "I can't control myself. I'm like Tiger Woods, I'm a sex addict. I tried to leave it behind and be a faithful husband until you made me start over by satisfying me. You're a threat." Then he hung up. I called Jeff's office and learned that he had taken a week off to attend to personal matters. I pulled into the house just in time to see him pull into the driveway in his Mustang. I ran after him and tried to go inside. He closed the door. That's all. I broke down and started knocking on the door. A few minutes later, Polly arrived. Jeff ended up getting a restraining order against me. My parents had to buy me out of prison. Over the next few weeks, I tried to see Jeff, but could only talk to him through our lawyers. I fought my divorce tooth and nail. I also watched the house every day. Jeff let me see the kids whenever I wanted, but it wasn't the same. Jeff met and had dinner with Patty several times, but nothing happened between them. This became clear when Patty's divorce was settled and their lawsuits against my company were also settled. Patty sold the house she shared with Ken and moved to another state. Last I heard, Ken left too. I heard that someone beat up Ken before he left. He dropped his lawsuit against me before he left, and I thought maybe Jeff had something to do with it. All the former managers were fired and most of them were getting divorced, with the exception of George, who was already a widower. George's heart condition worsened due to all the stress, and he ended up in the hospital. A month into my struggle with divorce, I received good news. I was pregnant. Knowing Jeff as a super dad, I knew he could never give up his child. My lawyer contacted Jeff, and he agreed to support me through the pregnancy. This gave me a little over 7 months to try to work things out while the divorce was on hold. Jeff brought the kids to see me a couple times a week. He talked to Mom and Dad, but never to me. Finally, I caught him off guard. "Jeff, I know you hate me, but we need to talk. I don't want our kids to be separated," I said. "I don't want to either," he said. "So I will seek custody of this child as well." I was shocked, but I was even more shocked by his next statement. "If it's mine," he said. I just cried and ran away from him. As the weeks passed, the pregnancy became problematic. I ended up in the hospital. Doctors examined the child's genetic abnormalities. They weren't, but unfortunately Jeff wasn't the father either. Jeff was able to contact Patty and get scraping samples from her children. Since no one could find Ken, it was good that he was eliminated. Al was also excluded, and since the child did not have African American genes, only one person was left to test. George died the day after he was confirmed to be the baby's father. This was the last straw. Jeff got a divorce. He was very fair. He received physical custody of the children. He got the house until the kids were grown, at which point we had to sell it and split the proceeds. We split everything else in half. We each kept our pension funds, which seemed unfair to me because my pension fund had almost nothing in it while he was fully formed and growing. Jeff continued to come see me until the baby was born. This time he didn't go into the delivery room or do any of the things he did for our babies, but I couldn't blame him for that. I gave the child up for adoption. I wanted him to have a good home with people who would love him. I didn't want him to grow up with a mother who saw him every day as a reflection of her biggest mistake. I couldn't find a job. 6 months after I was born, I was working as a waitress. Then my mom's friend called. She wanted to offer me a job as a housekeeper for one of her clients. The only problem was the salary. It was only a few $100s a week, but it was a live-in job, so I could save most of it. I didn't like being a waitress, so I said I'd go for an interview. I thought that while I was at this job, I could look for another one. Who knows, sooner or later my luck was bound to change. When she drove me to the house for the interview, my heart was pounding in my chest. I knew this area like the back of my hand. I even knew this house. When the door was open, Jeff shook my hand and led me into his kitchen. We talked and agreed on terms that were beneficial for both him and me. This gave Jeff the opportunity to go to work and not have to worry about the house or children, and I the opportunity to see my children grow up. I hinted from the beginning that if he was willing to communicate with help, I wouldn't mind offering him additional benefits. Well, one night, about a month after I returned, I went into his room wearing only a robe. I pretended it was just a mistake due to my habit of sleeping there for so many years. He smiled, and looking at my naked body, I felt that he wanted me. I went to bed with him, and he took me. I pulled his face towards me and tried to kiss him. "I love you, Jeff," I said feverishly, overcome with passion and love. He stopped and went out. "I'm so sorry, Lisa," he said. "This should never have happened." And this never happened again. It took me days to get over it, and I knew that it was not his fault. It was mine. I went to his room naked. He hadn't had sex since we were last together, and he was weak. He also tried his best to forget me, and what I did only confused him more. Eventually, we developed a comfortable friendship. Soon, Jeff began dating. The first woman he dated was strict with me. I hated her at first sight. Fortunately, it didn't last long. The next one lasted longer. We really became friends. I think it was because of me that she broke off the relationship. Our situation was too strange for her. I think Diana was probably the third or fourth woman Jeff dated, and from the first day she walked into the house, I knew it was her. She was very beautiful and very well built. She had the same energy as Jeff. I could just see them running around together and doing all these things that I could never do. And she literally lit up every time he entered the room. I knew it was only a matter of time before I became the odd one out. I talked to my parents about returning home. I decided it was better to leave before I was asked to do so. I also didn't want to embarrass my kids any more than necessary. She came one day while Jeff was at work. "We need to talk," she said. "Don't worry," I replied. "I'll probably move out next weekend." "That's what I wanted to talk about," she said. "Why would you leave? I love your children, but I'm not their mother. I'm also not a housewife. I can barely boil water. Jeff loves me, and he will never cheat on me. But he loves you too. I know about your past, and I know you love him too. You hurt him a lot, Lisa, but he still wants you around." "But," I started. "I grew up in a part of the country with a history of polygamy," she said. "That's not what we're going to do, but I think there's enough love here for everyone." And it worked for us. The three of us lived together for several years. No, we never had a threesome. Diana and I didn't even consider this possibility, but she and Jeff made me feel like part of the family. 5 years later, I met a man. He was older, and it wasn't Jeff, but that ship had sailed. Jeff and Diana were at our wedding, and I visit them and my children often. I will always love Jeff, and I will love him even more for my second chance. Although he never said these words out loud, his actions spoke loudly of his ability to forgive. A much lesser person could have spent the rest of his life trying to hurt me or keep me away from my children. An average-sized man could keep me around to make love to me and humiliate me for what I did. It took a really special person with a very big heart to resist the temptation to try and hurt me with the pain of his broken heart and give me a chance to salvage at least the friendship. Diana and I are very good friends. We are really not that different, and each of us needs the example that the other provides. I need my kids and my Jeff to be loved and well cared for since I can't be there. She, like me, is very ambitious when it comes to work, but she uses me as an example to know that there are things in life that you cannot sacrifice. Your marriage and your family are among them. I still find it hard to believe that I threw away the man I love and my family to get ahead in a stupid job I no longer have. Every time Diana sees me looking longingly at Jeff, she realizes exactly what she has to lose if she does something stupid. She hugs him a little tighter each time. End.